This is Dolynny TV, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here on the channel today. And you know what? I've taken the weekend off. Essentially, we last talked on Friday about the MIlan Lucic trade and all that fun stuff. And now all that's left me wondering all weekend long. Yes, I was playing ball. The Pirates were doing Pirates things all weekend long. Saturday night was a mess, as Saturday night should be at Beef and Barley Days. However, now back to the grind. Monday work on a Monday. It is the way it goes. And now I get to sit down with you guys and discuss a little bit about the fallout of the James Neal acquisition for the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously, you can't mention James Neal without the departure of MIlan Lucic and potentially a third-round pick. Some retained salary, and let's get on to that because I didn't exactly get to discuss that fully last time out. So MIlan Lucic, guys, the buyout was ugly, right? The buyout, the minimum for 1 year was like 3.8 at one point. You get him gone for $750,000. That ain't bad. Yes, okay, so you're stuck with James Neal technically for the next 4 years at 5.75. You're down $500,000. Realistically. That's the math, that's the numbers on Cap Friendly. So that leaves you with $2.4 million in cap space to somehow maybe fill out this roster when it comes to being a competitive team. We're talking competitive now. We seriously to place the expectations on James Neal that he's going to be the end-all be-all solution to our top six is not fair, not warranted, not realistic. That's just my take on it, right? But you look at the career production averages. I don't even have to mention the numbers. We all know what James Neal is truly capable of. You kind of have to look at it again when you look at my 82 CPA formula, 82 game career production average formula. The key part there that I always mention is the anomalies in the kind of playing career of a player, right? So whether it be a down year, up year, something that doesn't add up but is similar, right? You have to look at the anomalies, the trends, all that. And with James Neal, it's simply that, just an anomaly. So you sit here and you look back at, where were we a few seconds ago with Mr. MIlan Lucic? Where are we now with James Neal, the real deal Neal? And you have to sit and wonder, what's next for the Edmonton Oilers? And that's exactly what I want to discuss today, is the simple fact of there's always something next. And that's what I was kind of getting at the other week or last week or week before when I was talking about the Oilers getting so close to the cap. I think it was in the Josh Archibald video actually. And I was saying there's something coming. There's got to be something coming. And quite a few of you responded, holy crap, don't get your hopes up. And then by Friday we got MIlan Lucic out of town. So this is the realistic world we're living in now. It's no longer the crony kind of old boys club mentality, nothing needs to change because I say so mantra that we've lived with the Oilers since 2010, 2009, all the way back to 05, 06 if you really want to go there. But now we live in an era where Ken Holland is doing everything he can to fix the Oilers as fast and as well and as on target as he can. That's the key word, on target. And B, making this Oilers as competitive as they can be to reach that target. That's the key, right? The target. What's the target? Obviously, Connor McDavid's an NHL MVP. Leon Draisaitl scored 50 goals. You've got guys emerging on the back end that should be superstars in Evan Bouchard, Dmitry Samorukov. When he joins the NHL 2-3 years down the road, guys, he should be absolutely electric based on what we saw last year. You add all that up, you've still got McDavid and Draisaitl in their prime. Guys, this team should kill it for about next stretch. Next year's just to make the playoffs here, but after that, the next 4 to 5 years after that, the last year's the Connor McDavid deal, the last year's the Leon Draisaitl. It should be all about cup. No longer should we have to talk about the 80s as the glory days. I'm talking the early 20s should be the Oilers' heyday, right? Back in the early 20s last century, it was the Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs, maybe the Rangers a little bit, but it was the Canadiens and Maple Leafs absolutely dominating the early 20s that time around. This time around, in the 21st century, it's time for the Oilers to do it. And that is exactly what Ken Holland is gearing this team to do. So what's next? That is the question. What's next? When you look at the Oilers roster, I'd love to have a graphic, but there's just way too much here. You guys know the players. I don't need to relist the names. Obviously, what comes next for the Edmonton Oilers now that MIlan Lucic is gone? Now that you have a better option in James Neal financially, offensively, responsibly, right? There's a lot of pros to James Neal. He can prove us all wrong, 100%, and we're Oilers fans. We're used to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, per se. However, you look at it. What does this roster need? This roster needs that one more threat. And you look back to the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's essentially, guys, anyone who wants to crap on Crosby or on McDavid for not being as good as Crosby, we have to compare the Oilers as they are now to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who won the Cup in their first time go round with Sidney Crosby. Obviously, yes, they lost out to Detroit the year before, but then they finally won it. Now that's the team we need to resemble. Obviously, the one thing I'm not talking about front to back, top to bottom, resemble the Pittsburgh Penguins, but you look at that team, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to go Google this just to make sure I get the 08-09 Pittsburgh Penguins roster correct, because this is where I want to make sure I am good with it. The name I am looking for here is a guy. Well, obviously got Sergei Gonchar. I'm not too worried about him. Number 11, Jordan Staal. Okay, I had to make sure he was on the roster. Jordan Staal was your regular season secondary scoring leader for the Pittsburgh Penguins that year with 49 points. Third on the team. He was third on the team with 49 points. That's the weapon we need. Obviously, we're in a different era of hockey. Scoring is statistically a little bit up if you look at how Tampa Bay did it and a few teams did it this year. And that means, what do you got to look for? You got to look for Nugent Hopkins to keep emerging. But now it's no longer a three-horse gets the job done kind of race down the middle. That's what we'd be looking at. That's what I'm comparing, right? You've got Malkin, Crosby, Jordan Staal lifting a cup in 08-09. Realistically, McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge should be able to achieve the same thing. The NHL nowadays is packed that you need those depth centers all the way through your lineup, and then you need your impact wingers. The Oilers, as it sets up, the reason I'm kind of hesitant to try and compare them to those 08-09 Pittsburgh Penguins and what comes next for them is because of Draisaitl on the wing. Don't get me wrong, 100% I want Draisaitl on McDavid's wing. But you need that finishing piece. And it's no longer, as I said, it's not necessarily center depth or wing depth. It's a combination of four big pieces. You can have it all on one line and somewhere else, like the Oilers should, with Draisaitl, McDavid, and somebody, whether it be James Neal, Kassian. You got to have that finishing line, 100%. Though, if you're going to do that, you're going to have Nuge and somebody. And right now, Nuge and Chiasson isn't enough, but it's close. And that's the thing. If you're going to run it that way, you need a strong second line. Then you can have the bottom six just as your workhorses, guys who go grind it out, get the job done. But if that's not the case, then we have to discuss what comes next. And what comes next, in everybody's opinion, it seems, for this Edmonton Oilers club, now that Lucic is gone, now that we've got a top six winger in the midst, now that we've solved almost every problem, the last question is for $2.4 million, where do we find Jordan Staal on the third line per se? That's essentially my question. That is exactly where I boil it down to. You look at that Pittsburgh Penguins team, where do you find that third line center who's going to go in there, get you points, get you grinding, get you everything you could possibly ask for? Nuge isn't that guy. Nuge is our second line center. I'm dead set on that 100%. Now, the question is, do you go and spend that money to bonify the second line, have a James Neal, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, big guy on the left wing kind of deal? Do you have Neal with Neal with McDavid and Draisaitl, and then you try and figure that winger position, whatever? Do you solve the top 6 that way? Or do you go Gagne, Nuge, Chiasson, Gagne, Nuge, Neal, however you want to put it, Kazian on the top line in that situation, and then do you go and find that bona fide third line center? Is he already in our midst? That's the other question. But there's a lot of what comes next, and realistically, there's 2 ways to go about it, right? Either a top 6 winger still or that third line center. That's what comes next for the Edmonton Oilers at the current moment, in my opinion. However, there are some other ideas. Obviously, you need to move some kind of money on the blue line. Because if Darnell Nurse has another year like he had this year and grows a little bit more defensively, gets that defensive IQ from here to here, suddenly we're going to have to be paying him big bucks. Can we afford that? No, probably not. Unless you're going out of your way to move that money. And you look at 3 of the money guys. The 3 top earners in our defensive core right now, without having Evan Bouchard be a superstar at the current moment, without Dmitry Samorukov coming up 2 to 3 years from now instead of now, this is the 3 big earners. You've got Oscar Klefbom, Adam Larsson, and Chris Russell. Chris Russell at $4 million for the next 2 years. Adam Larsson, 4.166 for the next 2 years. Those are 2 guys. I know what you're going to say. If Larsson recaptures his magic. Guys, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of what comes next. Nobody, I quote, nobody thought that the deal that we got for MIlan Lucic in return for James Neal was possible. Ain't nobody thought that could have possibly worked as well as it did. Guys, this is a moral victory. It's paper. It's paper, that's it. This could totally backfire, don't get me wrong. But nobody thought it could happen that way. There were a couple of ideas that it similarly could have happened, but not the way it played out to a T. Not a chance. So, we're living in an era, too much ball this weekend, era where Ken Holland, at the reins of the general manager seat for the Edmonton Oilers, can get a good, better than fair deal for the Edmonton Oilers. This is where it is okay to move Adam Larsson. That's the faith I've given him. Not saying he's going to save it and he's going to get it right. I'm saying it's okay to try and move Adam Larsson. Better yet, move Russell. Now, you don't have to do that today. You don't have to do that tomorrow. What comes next is a front look, right? This is all the way leading up to opening night next year, I believe, against Vancouver. Guys, it's a long weekend. Haven't checked the schedule in a few days. Don't get me wrong. But you look at that. You go all the way into October. What comes next? There's a million things that come next. There's rookie training camp. There's rookie this. There's the games against the U of A. There's the games against McEwen. Guys, anything comes next. Obviously, time goes forward. However, what comes next on the defense is going to be very important. And when you talk about Darnell Nurse needing a contract, Evan Bouchard needing top line minutes halfway through the year next year or start of the year after, we need to solve the money issue. And Darnell Nurse needing that contract means Chris Russell is the most vulnerable to go, but the most return he can get on the back end without moving Oscar Klefbom is Adam Larsson. And that's the faith I have given Ken Holland. So what comes next? Is it that top 6 winger that we still want, covet, whatever? Yes, a Puljujarvi. What happens there? Is it a third line center who solidifies us and brings us those cup runs? Or is it a defensive move? That's where I'm going to leave it, guys. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Again, maybe still popping that champagne from the MIlan Lucic deal, but you let me know. I'm Tyson, this is Dolynny TV. I will catch you in the next one.